Hello, everyone. We are on a tight schedule, so we're going to get going pretty quickly here. I want to first of all welcome Attorney General Dana Nessel and her staff, and thank you for coming out today and doing all this for us. Thanks to all of you for coming here and supporting us, our students, our great staff and faculty. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dean Erica Breitfeld, who's going to do the real introductions. Erica.
Thank you, President McGrath. We are here today to talk about social justice. And it's a phrase that I think has gained a lot of popularity in recent years, but it's been a fabric of Attorney General Dana Nessel's career long before she was elected. Dana Nessel is a former criminal prosecutor and civil rights attorney who was sworn in as Michigan's 54th Attorney General on January 1st, 2019. Her service is marked by a promise to take the office and return it to the people it serves, Michiganders. In that spirit, social justice flows through nearly every one of her divisions. Her Consumer Protection Division has taken a lead role in fighting against companies that try to take advantage of Michigan consumers, whether it be through unfair business practices or unfair utility hikes. She also believes that a hard day's work should pay. And in that respect, she established the office's first payroll fraud enforcement unit to crack down on individuals and businesses who try to cheat Michigan workers out of their wage or their retirement benefits. As you can see, since taking office, she has walked the walk when it comes to social justice, but there's more. She has an environmental protection division that is actively fighting to ensure clean air, clean water, and energy for Michiganders so that our most valuable assets are preserved for generations to come. As the state's chief law enforcement officer, Attorney General Nessel launched Michigan's Elder Abuse Task Force in partnership with the Michigan Supreme Court. Finally, she has created a conviction integrity unit to investigate claims of innocence so that when she prosecutes the most heinous of crimes, the public can still have trust in our criminal justice system. She is a graduate of the University of Michigan and Wayne State University Law School, and after her very long days, she goes home to rest in Southeast Michigan with her wife and 2 sons.
And 4 cats, okay.
Esteemed guests and friends, we have with us a champion of social justice, a person who cared about it a long time ago, a person who will continue to fight for all Michiganders, and a true testament to what it means to use your life to do good for many, not just yourself. Please join me in welcoming Michigan's Attorney General, Dana Nessel.
Can you hear me? Is this working? Oh, great, great. I always say that I like the roaming mic because it reminds me of the many trials that I tried in state court, which is a lot more fun than the federal trials where you have to stand literally in one place, and it's very, very difficult, and then the judge yells at you if you move even one way or the other while they're taping you. So state court is better for that. But good news, at the Department of Attorney General, we try cases both in state and federal court. So you get a little of each. Anyway, it's great to be here with everybody today and to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that we do at the Department of Attorney General and a lot of our initiatives. You know, sometimes they were things that we planned on doing when I got into office, and then other things you just sort of had to react to. And it's great to have so many members of my staff here too, who are great ambassadors and representatives of the great work that we're doing at the department. So prior to becoming Attorney General, one of the things that I did was sue the Attorney General. And some notable cases, and probably the one that you might be the most familiar with, was what you probably know as Obergefell v. Hodges. That's probably how you learned about it. That shouldn't be the name of the case, just so you know, because the real name was DeBoer v. Snyder, which was the Michigan case. And it was the lead case on marriage equality, which we tried in 2014 and won, only the third time in American history that the issue of marriage equality was put to a trial. And then it advanced to the Sixth Circuit, where again, the name of the case was DeBoer v. Snyder. And then when all the Sixth Circuit cases were consolidated and went up to the United States Supreme Court, unfortunately, we used a publishing firm in Cincinnati and not one in DC. So somehow the very stupid Ohio case that was not nearly as meaningful as our case was filed first, 2 hours before ours, and now it has the name Obergefell v. Hodges, which is, nobody can pronounce it, quite honestly. And DeBoer, it's a Dutch name, it just flows off the tongue. It should have been DeBoer v. Snyder. I hope that from now on when you talk about that case, that's how you will refer to it. Anyway, but there was a case where you know, we sued the department, we sued the state, and it was the Department of Attorney General that was aggressively defending that case. And I guess the lesson I learned, I was very critical about how my predecessor used the financing, the funds of the state, and millions and millions of dollars of resources to fight against the ability of same-sex couples to be able to marry and legally raise children that they were already fostering. And I remember thinking, is there not a better way that we could use the state's money than to hurt such a substantial number of the population, of people who live here? And so what I discovered is this: as meaningful and important as it was to sue the Attorney General, it is actually way better to be the Attorney General. And then, you can just do the things that you think are important and are most impactful and actually help people in your state. And so what I would say to those of you that are looking for careers or wondering what's next, and if you're interested in social justice, you must be, because you're here. Because otherwise you'd be having lunch right now. But you can go into private practice, and when you don't like the way the government is treating the residents of our state or of our country, you can sue the government. You can work for a nonprofit, and you can do the same thing, and you can work all day, every day to fight the power, or you could just be the power, and you get to make those decisions yourself, not just running for an office like this, but working in an office like this, where as my staff has the opportunity to do, to regularly bring matters to the attention of myself and others, and decide how can we best use our resources to help the most people in our state. And so that's really what we've tried to do. And some of the things that we've done in partnership with you guys, of course, the Conviction Integrity Unit, in working with the Innocence Project. And what we have seen is this, and something that I know as a longtime prosecutor and defense attorney, we might have one of the best criminal justice systems in the world, but it ain't perfect, and people make mistakes, and sometimes even the most well-intentioned investigators and prosecutors get it wrong. And when that happens, we shouldn't just be resigned to say, well, I guess someone was convicted of an offense that they're now sentenced to spend the entire rest of their life in prison for, and new evidence has emerged. Maybe it's new DNA evidence, maybe it's other kinds of forensic evidence that's changed, maybe it's just the understanding that in a case that we just handled recently, that there was a cold case double homicide, and it emerged many years later that there was a large quantity of evidence that was never passed on from the original investigators to the cold case investigators who looked at it later. And that evidence would, if it didn't exonerate this individual, it certainly would cast reasonable doubt on the conviction. Suffice it to say, it turns out that in the same area at the same time, there was a serial killer who happened to be in that neck of the woods, and who had confessed to many, many similar killings as the ones in which the defendant was convicted. And that seems like the kind of thing you'd want to know if you were a jury, I would just say. Anyway, so, because of this work, that individual has now been set free. And, that's just one thing, and one parcel of some of the new work that we do at the office, but we have a lot of other things that we do as well. And I do want to do some Q&A, but I want to talk about just a few other things that I think it's important to know about. In terms of criminal justice, we started an expungement unit at the office in lieu of the fact that, first of all, there was this new clean slate package of bills that passed a few years ago, and understanding really the significant impact that it has on the life of a person when you have a conviction on your record, but you have served your time, and you have gone a lengthy period of time without any new convictions, and to understand how that conviction is like an anchor that weighs you down for the rest of your life. And it makes it hard for you to get a job, makes it hard for you to find a place to live, it makes it difficult for you to get student loans if you want to get an education. You are literally held back in every way, shape, and form from being able to progress in your life. And the worst part about it is it contributes to recidivism. More people reoffend because they can't get rid of that criminal conviction no matter what length of time goes on. So we put together a division that does nothing but help to expedite and to process and to assist people with these convictions. We go all over the state, and we went from 2 years ago processing about 2,000 expungements to 14,000 the next year. And we're still just getting our feet wet, and we're just still getting started, but we're gonna continue to help people understanding that within 1 year, just 1 year of a person having an expungement, their income tends to rise about 21, 22% in a single year. And again, recidivism decreases markedly. Another thing that is sadly very, very topical that we've done at the office is we created, first in the country, hate crimes and domestic terrorism unit. Now, it started off just as a hate crimes unit, understanding the exponential rise in bias-oriented crimes against many different communities. And the thing about hate crimes that is somehow different in many ways from other crimes is that when you have a crime that is motivated by bias against somebody's race or their gender or their ethnicity, national origin, so on, it's not just that it has an intimidating presence on the person, the victim, the complainant, but it's a stronger message to that entire community. That's the purpose of a hate crime. And so understanding the significant rise in those types of offenses, we thought it was very important that we had a statewide department where, because we have criminal jurisdiction in all 83 counties, we could investigate and we could prosecute all over the state. What I didn't necessarily see coming was the rise in domestic terrorism. And what's an interesting thing to note is that Michigan actually has the best domestic terrorism laws on the books of just about any state in the country, and that you should know the feds don't have domestic terrorism laws, only international terrorism. So they can't even charge those kinds of cases. So what we started to do was this. Firstly, we brought charges against a number of anti-government white supremacy groups. And these were groups that had intended to do things like, in one case you might have heard of with the Wolverine Watchmen, conspired to kidnap and assassinate a sitting governor. In another case, against a group called The Base, they were conspiring to commit mass carnage. They had uniforms, they had amassed an arsenal of weapons, they had a training site, and they were just waiting to pick the right location to kill as many people as possible. only we intervene. We investigated along with our federal and state and local partners. We prosecuted under our domestic terrorism laws. And now, instead of having blown up a church or a supermarket or a 4th of July parade, those members are they're taking a time out. They're taking a little time out at the Michigan Department of Corrections. And sometimes the best thing that you can do, by the way, as a prosecutor, is not to prosecute when someone has already committed a homicide or several homicides, but to prevent them from committing a crime at all, so that they're not hurting anyone. So those are some of the things that we've done. The other thing is we've used that unit to prosecute people who threaten government officials. And whether these are judges, we just had a case last week involving the Court of Appeals that were threatened, whether it's legislators, members of both parties, whether it's congressional representatives, senators, even the President of the United States. Our belief is this: you can disagree with your elected or appointed government officials, and you can let them know, you can give them a piece of your mind, you can email them or write them or call them and say, I don't agree with your policies, I am going to organize against you, I'm going to vote you out of office. And that you're entitled to do all those things. You should do those things. I think you're obligated to do those things as an American. But what you can't do is you can't threaten to murder that official and kill their family members. That is a crime. And it is a crime that's directed at undermining our democracy. Because if you get people who feel like they can't make a certain decision because they're afraid they're going to get physically harmed, or who are afraid to take that position in the first place, won't run for office or turn down an appointment because they say, no thanks, I love being county clerk, but I'm not going to do it anymore because I'm tired of all the death threats, that is undermining democracy. That is sabotaging democracy. And so we've taken a hard stance against that, and we charge those cases each and every time that there's evidence to do so. But anyway, I could talk about our initiatives for a really long time, but what I'd really like to do is get questions from people about the work that we're doing. And if you have any questions about, how you can sign up to come work at the Department of Attorney General, we also have clerkships and internships, and we are really excited to see the new group of law students who are coming out of Cooley and might want to work at the department. We have so many exciting divisions. What do we have now? 26 divisions? Do I have that number right? 27? Sometimes I get that wrong. But that's the great thing about the department, is that no matter what it is that you're interested in, I guarantee we handle it at the Department of Attorney General. When you read the paper, like it's the 1940s or something, when you look at your laptop and you click on, EbLive or Free for Debt News or, wherever you're getting your news source from, I guarantee half the things that you are seeing on the very front page are issues that we have touched in some way, shape, or form. Not during March Madness as much, but otherwise. Also, let's not talk about Michigan and the NIT. It's a very sad and sore subject. So no questions on that. I will not be taking any questions on how Michigan did this year. But with that, I'd love to take questions from folks, if anybody has any. Yes.
What has been your office's response to what happened a month ago at MSU?
So, did everybody hear that question? Our office's response to the shootings at Michigan State. So, what we did in response and what we did prior to that, and we were very involved in, were helping the legislature to draft bills, some of which have already now are on their way to becoming law on a number of different fronts. So we're talking about universal background checks, we're talking about red flag laws, otherwise known as ERPOs, and safe and secure storage laws. So we work directly with the legislature on formatting those laws, putting them together, and I testified in support of those laws. I think that the way the legislature perceives these laws, that's really for them a floor, not a ceiling, in terms of other laws that we think can better protect the public. The other thing I did, not with universities, but this was in the wake of Oxford, is I did a tour around the state to see how grants were being spent that were provided by the Michigan State Police to high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, to see how they could better provide security for the staff and for the students at those schools, and whether it had to do with making recommendations about security cameras or walkie-talkies or coordinating better with the local police, and sadly, in many cases, having to harden the schools a little bit. When I say that, I mean making sure that they had more secure systems for their doors, and making sure that not just anybody could walk in to a high school, that they had to be buzzed in, one very fun part of it was getting to work with school safety dogs, which are now being used more and more. And school safety dogs, what they do is they can actually detect, even in very small amounts, gunpowder residue and anything that is explosive in nature. So, we worked with this group, and now more and more schools have the school safety dogs. They just are trained to sit in the event that they detect a weapon. But for instance, had they had one in Oxford, that's probably a good example. We can go back and forth about whether the personnel at the school, the administrators, should have gone through Ethan Crumley's backpack, but if they had a school safety dog, they could have just had a dog in that area, and the dog would have detected that there was a gun in the backpack, and could do the same thing with lockers all around. So those are some of the things we've done. Am I missing anything on that front? But we're going to continue. We're working with the legislature right now. We're going to continue working with them on a number of different bills that I think people are going to see in the future that I think are going to be very, very popular with the public.
That's fine, I could shout it.
That's right. I'll bring the mic over here. I want to make sure everybody can hear.
How hard is it to make these changes within your jurisdiction when it's an issue that nationally is kind of swept under the rug, and we don't really bring attention to it due to the fact that it involves a constitution that founding fathers did, but in mind they had a gun that reloaded in 3 minutes, and now we have assault rifles.
Well, everybody has an opinion on the Second Amendment, and I have my own thoughts on that. But let me say this. So my job as Attorney General is to defend the state laws, and to defend them honorably and ethically. And that what it means is this. It means that when you see that there are areas where the legislature may be running afoul of the Constitution, to try to pull them back a little bit, and that's part of what we do working with the legislature, is to say, hey, listen, you might want to be careful of the way that you have phrased this, or the way you phrase something else, because you don't want to be in a set of circumstances where at long last you're able to pass laws that can actually reduce gun violence, but then only to get it challenged and overturned in the courts a year later. And so what we've tried to do is to be very careful and measured and cautious about the phrasing of some of these bills, to make sure that there's due process that is afforded to anybody who either is denied the ability to own a weapon or who has a weapon removed from them. And to ensure that we have laws that we can defend in the courts. And then of course, even with these new bills, we do expect them to get challenged, and my department will be defending these laws. But that's why we try our hardest to make sure that these are bills that when we look at other rulings around the country, certainly of course when we look at rulings by our state courts, that we are ensuring that these laws are in accordance with both our state and our federal constitution, to the best of our ability, knowing that at any time a court can come up with a different opinion. And just because something is precedent, if we've learned anything, doesn't mean that when you have a different composition of the courts, they won't come up with something a little bit different. But we try within the best of our ability to make sure that we are ethically, honorably upholding the law and defending it in court.
Zoriana Blunt. My question is, I have an interest in the social aspect of making change, and you mentioned about the best thing is to be the power. With the power comes a position where you have to look at the holistic view of situations. So how do you walk that line as far as where to compromise, when, and with what?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's not always easy, right? Sometimes it's hard. So I will give you, I'll give you some examples what it involves. Firstly, let's talk about criminal justice reform. You know, where is that line between ensuring not only, of course, that defendants receive due process under the law, and that you're setting up people who have criminal convictions, whether they serve time in a state, you know, or in a local jail, or the Michigan Department of Corrections, or serve, you know, probation or what have you, that they're able to move on in a way that best serves not just themselves but society as a whole, but also balancing that with the rights of victims. Which, again, you know, I'm the chief law enforcement official in the state. If I'm not there to look out for victims' rights, then I don't know who is. And so that is a fine line that you have to walk. And let me just give you some examples of things that, you know, there's a lot of debate about. One of them is whether or not we re-implement a policy that used to exist in the state called good time credits. And basically, those were credits that you get for not picking up disciplinary actions while you're serving your time in the Department of Corrections. And if you didn't pick up any of those tickets, then you had a better chance of getting out, not at your minimum, but before your minimum. So early. Well, when I was a prosecutor, you know, that was really hard because I would have a serious crime where somebody was victimized, oftentimes a violent crime, and the first thing you want to know as a victim is, how much time is he going to get? How much time is this person going to get who has raped me or robbed me or assaulted me or shot me or stabbed me? And when you tell them, well, he's looking at getting 3 to 15 years, because we always have a minimum and a maximum, except for a few different crimes in Michigan. You know, you want 3 to 15 to mean 3 to 15, and not, I don't know. Could be 3 to 15, could be less than that. I can't tell you exactly how much time. So we changed the law many years ago, and we have something now called sentencing. Truth in sentencing. Thank you. Sorry, long name. Truth in sentencing, and the whole point was that whatever sentence is rendered by the court, when the judge says 3 to 15 years, it means 3 to 15 years, so that if you are a victim and you need to be able to recuperate from this horrible set of circumstances, whether that means getting some mental health treatment, recovering from your wounds, finding a new place to live, doing what you can now do in Michigan, which is to register with the address confidentiality, which is a new law that's going into effect, so that it's harder to find a person and they can register their voting information, their driving information with the state, and it doesn't have to be public online. Things like that you might need time to do, and you want to know, okay, for these next at least 3 years, I know that this person who has abused me or assaulted me is going to be removed from me and will not have the ability to come find me and seek me out and harass me or worse. And so, you know, other people say, well, but you got to give people something that encourages them to get their GED or to behave well in prison or what have you. So there's an example, right, of something that there are good arguments on both sides. And for me as Attorney General, I have to decide, like, which side am I going to come down on? And to be, just very vocal, and I've said this many times in the past, my experience as both a prosecutor and defense attorney, I believe that the sentence that the judge says in court should mean something. And I took the same position, by the way. I argued a case, oddly, I argued a case against my own office, which I know sounds strange, before the Michigan Supreme Court. We represent all of the county prosecutors' offices in all of their appellate work if they are a county that has 75,000 people or less. They just don't have the resources to do their appellate work. So it was, I want to say it was Cass County, and there was a case where the judge had not told the defendant that he was eligible to receive his time on 2 counts consecutively, meaning stacked on top of each other. Normally, the normal process is that crimes usually run concurrent to each other, so at the same time. So the guy thought that he was getting a maximum of 5 years. He had 2 5-year offenses, but they ran concurrent, and instead he ended up getting a maximum of 10 years. Nobody told him that, and so my argument to the court was, that's not right. You should have to tell people how much time they are eligible to receive if they're going to plead guilty. Well, I feel the same way when it comes to sentences that are issued by the court for victims. You know, what the court says should be actually and factually truthful. And if you say 3 to 15, you should mean a year and a half. And so everyone's got a different opinion on that. And it's, again, there are good faith actors on both sides of that argument. But that's just one where I have to weigh and balance my experiences in the criminal justice system and those of my staff, listen to both sides, and then take a position. And you know, that's just one of those. But yes, it happens all the time where you really have to spend a lot of time evaluating. And let me say one other thing, even though I know I've already been given the you have to go sign. But so it's our job to represent the state of Michigan, and that means all the state agencies and departments and many state actors. But it's also my job to represent the people of the state of Michigan. So what happens when you have, whether there's malfeasance involved, whether it's good intent, but just somebody does the wrong thing, what happens when you have a state agency or a state actor that harms the people of the state of Michigan in their actions? And this is where I think it is great to have the flexibility that we have, because sometimes there are lawsuits that are brought against the state where the state is actually wrong. The state did something they should not have done, an agency, an actor, and sometimes it harms one person, sometimes it harms a whole lot of people. Not anything in particular, Flint, but there are times when that happens. And you know, you as the head of the department, you have the ability to decide, am I just gonna fight this until I wear the plaintiffs down, or until we have a ruling that possibly throws these cases out? Or am I going to try to settle these cases, understanding that the state hurt people, and it's now their job to indemnify those individuals who have been hurt by the actions of the state? And so that's, again, it's a weighing and a balancing test, and I think different AGs and different AG offices probably handle similar situations differently. But I think, again, it requires, you know, if you're going to do a good job representing the state, you should remember that the state is comprised of over 10 million residents who live in our state. And you have to be cognizant of both of those things at the same time. And that's what we've tried to do at the department to the best of our ability. So anyway, I really want to thank you all for having me out here today. And I know that hopefully, I don't know if you've already talked to my staffers or if you're going to be meeting them soon. I don't know, I just got here. Okay, all right. But please, you know, please spend some time speaking to them and talking to them about all the different things. I mean, I've just, you know, scratched the surface of some of the work that we do. But, you know, we do a lot of interesting stuff. And I will say this, Firstly, your bar card, when you have one, is really your ticket to being able to right all kinds of wrongs in society. There's really no job I can think of where you're better able to do that than being a licensed attorney. And the other thing I will say is this, when some of you graduate and, pass the bar, you may have a lot of different opportunities presented to you. And some of those jobs that you could take might pay more than others. But my experience after being a licensed attorney for, 29 years, I know, I look so young. How do I do it? You can say it. My experience is this. The people who did not love being lawyers didn't stay lawyers. They left the profession because they just didn't love their work. And the people who stay and they spend their entire career as an attorney, it's because they find their work to be meaningful. And for your work to be meaningful, it means more than how many hours you bill a week or a month or a year. It means job satisfaction. It means finding that the work that you do makes a difference in the lives of other people. So with that, again, I haven't said it too many times, you should definitely check out the Michigan Department of Attorney General when you're looking for where you want to land. We do a lot of exciting things. So thank you again so much for having me. Much appreciated.
Our next speaker is a testament to what hard work, a passion for empowering people, especially victims, and a Cooley law degree can get you. You heard me correctly. Veneshia Cezil is with us today, and she is a proud alumna here at our school. Interestingly, Veneshia and I have met before. And back in her time in law school, she took advantage, like many of you will, to take an externship. And she was assigned to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. And she was assigned to a state prosecutor who will never forget her. That was me. And Veneshia we worked in a busy court that served underprivileged populations. And Veneshia was rare. She was hungry to do more. She was fearless. And she had a true passion for service. So I remembered her, obviously, and I'm not surprised at all by her achievements today. After law school, she passed the bar in both Illinois and Michigan. And in 2010, she joined the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office's General Trials Division, prosecuting several hundred cases, assault crimes, motor vehicle, homicides, rapes. Then, because of the way she handled those cases, she was specifically assigned to the sexual assault unit. And during that time in the sexual assault unit, she was assigned to cases which involved serial rapists, DNA evidence, and a lot of media attention. And despite the complexity of those cases, because anyone will tell you those are some of the hardest cases to try, she always empowered victims to find their voice and face their attackers. She joined the Attorney General's office in 2015 and continued to give children a voice by representing the Department of Health and Human Services in child abuse and neglect proceedings. She currently serves as Chief of Operations and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at the Michigan Department of Attorney General. Veneshia immigrated from Jamaica to the United States with her mother when she was an infant. She became a U.S. citizen in 2020 and remains passionate about serving her community and mentoring. And this is just a personal side note to really kind of epitomize who she is. In a recent conversation when we were talking about time and how time flies, she said to me that she thinks of her life as a light on a candle, and that she wants to use her candle to light other people's lives. And she said to me, it just makes the room brighter. And I thought that was such a poetic way to explain her philosophy about how she wants to use her life to help people. And so students, faculty, staff, and our guests, please let's welcome home Veneshia Cezil, the Chief of Operations and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
everyone can hear me? Okay. So I just want to have a real conversation with you all and be candid. I am so grateful and thankful to be here with you. And I just want to talk to you about what's not in the bio. It's closed doors. And when I talk about closed doors, I want you to think of them in a positive way. I sat right here at this school and I was excited, and this is how I ended up with the Illinois license. I had 3 rounds of interviews for an on-campus interview and was offered a position at the Illinois State Attorney's Office. I'm excited, like, let's go, I'm moving to Chicago. And then the economy hit, and they said we have to rescind your offer. It was devastating, but it was one of the best things that ever happened. And I bring up closed doors because staying here in Michigan skyrocketed my career and opened up opportunities that I would have never gotten going to Illinois. I tell you that also to not put yourself in a box. I was a ride or die litigator. That was my concentration, and I still love it. You can't bear to peel me out of a courtroom. If a staff member said they can't cover a case, I, the chief of operations, would be like, hey, you need me to cover it for you. But with that said, I went to law school because I didn't like numbers. As the chief of operations, I'm now responsible for maintaining an over $100 million budget. So I tell you, don't put yourself in a box. When we talk about giving a voice to the voiceless, you are in such an excellent circumstance because this is what your law degree and your law license is going to do. You're going to be speaking on behalf of others. When you are looking out there for your opportunities, look at that office's culture. Determine whether or not they really encourage your growth. Do they have mentorship programs? The Michigan Department of Attorney General, we employ over 550 staff members, and we have an over 90% retention rate. And the reason why we have that is because of our robust mentoring programs, our dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion, understanding that those aren't just buzzwords or check boxes, right? That we make sure that not only do we have an inclusive work environment, but we have an equitable work environment. If you are willing and ready to be a part of that change, where you're not just citing case law, you are a part of that case law, come over and check us out. We have over 20 divisions. In each of those divisions, you have 4 to 6 sections. Any area of the law that you can possibly think of, if you're interested in contract, civil, criminal, administrative law, transactional law, it's there. My motto also is, we have entered to learn, right? And if you are ready to depart and serve, come and join us at the Michigan Department of Attorney General. Please go ahead and see our staff over at the tables, get all the information. If you don't even see an opportunity that you're interested in, we also offer a shadowing program. So you can look at an area and say, hey, I want to learn more about your environmental natural resources division. Can I shadow one of your attorneys for the day? Yes, you absolutely can. So again, thank you so much for having me, and take advantage of this opportunity.
Thank you, Veneshia. Students, I really hope that you will take a few minutes before you leave and talk to the distinguished attorneys we have here and the staff from the AG's office. Ask questions, ask them what they do, ask them what their interests were in law school, and just take some time to have some conversations. It's supposed to be light and informal. It's not an interview, so don't be afraid. But please take advantage. They're here. They came here specifically to talk to you, and they are ready for you over here in the corner. So thank you, Veneshia, so much for coming. We're so proud of you. Thank you.